One. Hello and welcome to a special episode of the 1904 Club reviewing the trip to Turkey. It's the final day here in Istanbul. It's bakingly hot, but Fletch, you're telling me that is it warm at home? Surely not.
It is. It is warm at home. Summer is here in Hull. 27 degrees today in the baking hot sunshine.
Oh my good God.
At the time of we're speaking mid-afternoon on a Friday, and I've just been out to grab some scran, and honestly, it's humid, it's close, it's that nasty heat. So I actually would rather it be cold and drizzly again. But hey ho.
You can't say that. It is stiflingly hot here. In fact, we were talking at the training ground earlier that it was it's been getting hotter as the week's gone on. If apologise to those listening if you can hear lots of noise. We are in the middle of Istanbul.
Is that a skip reversing behind you or something? What's going on?
It's just always. We've got the Turkish. I don't know which. Forgive my ignorance, but because I've only seen the staff, but we have got a Turkish team here, staying in the hotel with us.
In Turkey, that is.
You couldn't believe it, could you? Yeah, but the roads are carnage all around here. Anyway. Less of the small talk. Let's look back on the trip. Today's the final day. The players didn't train today. The players that played against Fenerbahce last night didn't play. They did a light gym session this morning, and the fans that were here as part of the club's competition came and they did a bit of a meet and greet in the restaurant, which was nice. They posed for pictures and whatnot, and off they went on the merry way. And the players were given some time off this afternoon by Tim Walter. I think some of them were going to play golf, though. As much as I love playing golf, I'm not sure I want to be playing golf in this heat. If I'm honest. I know you're a king golfer, Fletch. Would you want to be playing in 35, 36 degree heat?
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm planning on playing tomorrow, and the forecast for where I live is about 29-30 tomorrow. So
is it really?
Yeah.
So, are you telling me we're going to be landing at Humberside Airport in 30-degree heat?
Probably not Humberside Airport. I mean, you might not be landing at all with the news that's happened today with this IT fiasco that's been going on.
So I hear, yeah. I mean, yeah, I hear that. And we were chatting earlier on about the likelihood of being given another couple of days in Istanbul. I mean, there's worse places to stay on the Bosphorus, I've got to say. There
is. I mean, you can have more Starbucks coffee, Baz. By the looks of it.
I have racked up a bit of
indulging in the local. Well done on indulging in the local delicacies. I'm proud of you.
I know I'm a bit of a corporation something. Though, in my defence, the hotel serve Starbucks, and it's lovely and air conditioned in the restaurant, which was where I was sat planning to do this. And I thought, I'll sit down and have a nice cup of coffee in the air conditioned cafe, and then it's full of the Turkish team. So and they're all chattering away, and which was lovely, but it's not conducive to recording the podcast. So I thought I'd come outside, where it's baking, and obviously I'd already committed to the coffee, so I'll need a cold massage, I think. Anyway, let's talk about last night. Fenerbahce 5, Hull City 1. Scoreline is doesn't look great, does it? But I think, given the performance in the first 40 minutes, which was terrific, I think there's plenty to be encouraged by.
Yeah, I think, as you say, the first 35, 40 minutes, it felt. I won't say it did feel like a friendly. I don't think either Fenerbahce or the City are going to be playing at that tempo all season when things get underway. I think the telling thing, and without wishing to be too negative, is I think you can kind of tell how hard they've been worked, I think, which we'll come on to in a bit. And the reason I think that is, even though they looked good going forward without a striker and getting into wide areas and crossing the ball in, the defenders, bless them, looked absolutely shattered, and I think it told in the end. Nice control. I'm interested to know how many nosebleeds Sean McLaughlin's had on this pre-season camp with how far he was getting up the pitch. Same for Matty Jacob as well. But yeah, it was a flattering scoreline, I think, for Fenerbahce. But with it being a friendly, I don't think anyone's going to lose sleep over it going forward.
No, I think, and that's the key. I've got to say, I think for the first 30 minutes or so, City were brilliant. The fact that the ground wasn't full last night. We were told it was going to be full, but it wasn't, because they're doing quite a lot of renovation work underneath at Saracoli. So I think it was limited to about 30,000, but it was the atmosphere was astonishing. But but they were jeering for much of that first half. So that was an indication of how well City were playing. But what I found really interesting was the fact that last season, when City dominated the ball in many games last season, but they dominated it on the edge of their own penalty area, and it would go from goalkeeper out to the D, back across, and they would dominate there. But they didn't have meaningful possession in the opposition's half or final third. Whereas last night, I mean, the stats are incredible for last night. I think they had in the game. They had 61% of the ball, but they play so high that most of the ball they have is in the opposition half. And Tim is very keen not to have. He's not a manager that wants possession for the sake of having the ball, which I kind of felt. And bless him, he would never admit this, Liam. But I kind of felt at times last season they just kept the ball for the sake of it. They didn't do anything with it. And the possession, there was that start doing the rounds in this, wasn't there? They'd had more passes in their own half than any other team in the Championship, which was indicative of how much ball they had across the back. Whereas that isn't what Walter does, and they're much more incisive going forward. They play, at one point in the first half, you had Louis. Funny enough, I've spoken to him. I've interviewed him this afternoon, Louis Coyle. And I said to him, like, at one point in the first half yesterday, you'd got him, Sean McLaughlin, and Matty Jacob all in the left wing position. And obviously, naturally, then like Alfie Jones covers across. So that position where Louis was would be filled. But it's fascinating to watch. And I think, it's hard to talk about last night and that first half, particularly before the 2 goals came, without just coming back to the point that they've got nothing going forward. And look, Ryan Longman's a nice guy. I've interviewed him many times since he's come to Hull City, and I like him. But he's not a Championship centre forward. He's a winger, and he's a capable winger. He's a hard-working winger, but his numbers aren't anywhere near high enough for a team that want to get into the Championship playoffs. My argument, and I said this last night, was yes. The caveat, Fletch, is that we're not yet at the season start, so there's a lot to go, a lot to happen. But effectively, last night, they've replaced 12 goal and 6 assist Jaden Philogene with 3 goal and 2 assist Ryan Longman. Now, by anybody's stretch, without being at all disrespectful to Ryan, that isn't an upgrade. And that is the problem they've got all over the pitch, where they've lost such good players and they've been replaced by players that are coming back from loan spells or weren't involved last season. And I think that is a fundamental problem.
Yeah, and the one thing that I can try and spin positively in Ryan's favour is that when we've spoken to him previously and when we've watched him play, he's a confidence player.
Absolutely.
You know full well if he's at it, then he's a handful and he can score a really good goal. We saw it against Everton, saw it against Bristol City, both outside.
Bournemouth away was a classic, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, you can't pin everything on him to be the one that's going to get you into the top 6. Absolutely not. He needs those people around him. And bless it, there has been times, hasn't there, where like Huddersfield away sticks out like a sore thumb when we lost 2-0. That was the game where, Andy Dawson was in charge, temporary charge, and that's when it really was at rock bottom, really, in the new ownership era of Adrian Ilagella and everyone else. You could tell that there's such a level of where he is confidence and where he can really hit rock bottom, and it's not pleasant to watch when he hits rock bottom because he can miss really good golden chances. But if I can try and put something in his corner, if he's got people around him who are going to make it competitive in training, and he's going to get that level of service from what we've seen last night in the right areas, his ratios might go up, but time will have to tell, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm not. I take your point. I think if Hull City are going into the season with Oscar Peenan,
Who's he? Is he one of the 9?
He's the new number 9. If City go into the season with Ryan Longman and Oscar Estepinen, I think that would be a worry for me. And I just hope beyond hope that they get the quality in, because I've seen enough in the 2 games against Kashimpaza and of course Fenerbahce last night. I've seen enough in those games to think that with the right players, they've got every chance. I mean, it's a very cavalier approach that the manager operates, and that worries me to a point in the Championship that when teams start, there will be a honeymoon spell that, sometimes you see it in the Premier League, don't you, where the teams that have just come up from the Championship do okay for the first half of the season because it takes a while for other teams to work them out. Now, I think that might be the case with City in the Championship because they're so the rotations of players, the way they move the ball, the way they move around each other, players appearing in all different sorts of positions. I think that'll take a bit of working out from some teams. But if they're going to do it effectively, they've got to have the players to do it. And I'm not convinced right now they've got the players to do it. And we saw it last night. And that's, again, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you're playing a team in Fenerbahce who came second in the Super League, got 99 points. They've got a Champions League qualifier against Lugano in Switzerland on Tuesday. That was their 5th pre-season game compared with City's 2nd. So they're light years ahead, and they've got better players. I mean, you've got Fenerbahce have got Edin Dzeko up front, and
Hull City Maximin on.
Yeah,
it's a Champions League worthy squad, Baz.
Yeah,
Europa League at least.
It was conference. They got to the conference league. Was it semi-finals, quarter-finals? They lost to Olympiacos, who eventually went on and won it. That was they only lost on penalties. So, and they've now got a manager in Jose Mourinho. So there's levels, and City are we're a Championship team that finished 7th, but you can't even say that now because the team that finished 7th doesn't exist. It's been disbanded. You raised a brilliant point a few weeks ago about the amount of goals. 68 goals they scored in the league. 65 of them have gone now.
It's mental, isn't it? It's
and
mental.
they've got to find a way to bridge that gap. They've got to find, and at the minute, that's the worry. And I do understand. I've spoken a lot to Ajun. I've spoken a lot to Tan over the last couple of weeks, and and other people here, and you have to give them time. Well, there's nothing else I can do. I can say what I think, and I can write what I think, and the fans can do the same, and we can all offer our 2 penneth. But at the end of it, it matters not. The only people that have got any power to change this is the people running the football club, and they will know far more than I do. They will know far more than the rest of us put together about where they're at, and they are trying to keep their cards relatively close to their chest because of a reluctance to drip names out into the media and risk, hampering deals. But the long and short of it is, with 3 weeks to go, they're nowhere near ready, and that is my worry. Yeah, okay, players are going to come in, and players will come in between now and the end of the window. But my concern is that they're just not going to be Championship ready come the start of the season unless things start to move very, very quickly. They may well do when we get back to England. Hopefully, things start to happen.
Yeah, and it was fascinating. So I listened to Mike White and Radio Humberside's interview with Tim on the train this morning coming into work in the prep ahead of this. And some people were saying on social media that Tim cuts across a frustrated figure when it comes to transfers, and this percentage that's suddenly being battered about to say that he's turned down 80% of the players that have been offered to him. Now, there's 2 sides to that. There's the first side is he wants players who tactically can deal with what he's going to throw at them, but also he wants the quality. Now, the other side of that is you've got a question of balance, and that is Tim happy with what Hull City are going for based on the financial position that they find themselves in? But then, if you're talking finances, Jaden has now gone at the time of recording. He went this morning. Greavesy has gone. So there is now a pot of money to work with. And it might be the case that you see in the next 7 to 10 days, for example, that things have been lined up and it's now a case of, well, we want to do this. You signed, you sealed, but the money's going to come, for example, next week. And you could have it whereas this right back gets boxed off, a striker gets boxed off, a winger gets boxed off. You might see your first loan signing come in. Things could accelerate quickly, unless, Mr. Cooper, you're going to tell me otherwise.
No, I think things will start to happen quickly. I do think that they need to. They've obviously got the right back lined up. It's hoped that he will join the squad next week. and that will be a boost. But then they don't need a right back necessarily.
Need striker.
Look, it's transfers. Despite what people that play Football Manager think, transfers are you don't do them in order of necessarily of how you'd like them to come in terms of, well, we want 3 wingers and 3 strikers, so we'll do them first, then we'll worry about a right back, at the end of the window. If the right back you want comes available at the start of the window, you get him. That's that's how it works. And I think the right back I think that will lift the mood a bit. I think people will be happy with that signing. But yeah, the attention is, of course, up front. Oscar will be back when the players get back to England. He will join in training next week. So I would imagine we won't see him at Doncaster, but I would imagine we'll see him potentially against Newcastle. If not Newcastle, then definitely Fiorentina. I'd like to think, look, let's get it on record here. They are not going to sign 8 or 9 new players before the start of the season. There won't be 8 or 9 players in for Bristol City. That is just not going to happen. 8 or 9 players, which is what they want, by the end of the window on 11 p.m. on August the 30th. That is what they're working to. And as we saw last season, Jaden arrived on deadline day. Tyler Morton arrived on deadline day, as did James Furlong and young Bora from Fenerbahce, although he was never involved in the first team. Ryan Allsop was quite late in the window. I think Allsop was the last week, if I'm right in thinking.
Yeah, he was, yeah. I think he was about 3 days to go, I think.
Yeah, but I think by that point, they'd already signed Liam Delap. So there was, obviously, Lakilo had arrived. I don't think he'll be at the club much longer. I think he'll go. He wasn't involved against Fenerbahce. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work that out when you've got no attacking players, what the situation is there. So, look, they need, for me, they need 2 or 3. They need 2 or 3 in by the start of the season, just to give themselves. You look at the bench last night, with the greatest respect to the young kids. Hopefully that wind isn't, that little breeze that's coming through isn't killing the sound. I apologise if it is. You look at the bench last night. He's got nothing on there. He's got Harry Wilson. He's got Sincere Hall. Sincere Hall obviously came off the bench and did really well. Scored his second goal in 2 games. Nathan Tinsdale did well again when he came off. But he's got nobody, and that is where they're at. He looks at his bench, and I kind of thought he'd make changes at half time. He didn't make any changes until 60, 65 minutes, I think it was. And it's because he's looking around at his bench and he's got academy kids, and that isn't going to cut it in the Championship. So it's difficult, isn't it? I find myself in a really difficult position because I know they'll strengthen, but until they start bringing in players, it's hard to keep saying. It's just talking. All we're doing is talking about what they need to do, about what they must do, and about what they need areas. Until they start actually getting players in the building and into training, it's kind of it's just waffle, really, isn't it? And we're just kind of going around in circles because we all want the same thing. Yeah.
It's I mean, I shouldn't use this expression in front of you, Baz. I mean, you're so well connected, but paper talk is what's keeping the fans, hunger. It's keeping them in a position where they're still interested but we live in an age now where the toxicity of social media, everything has to be done in 5 minutes. I don't think people really understand just how complex a transfer can be at times for those who don't really pay too much attention to it. It's not just, getting on the phone to a club and going, we're going to bid this much. What do you think about it? You've then got to sit down and go through a whole contract. And, how many times have we been in a situation where you've got to move house, you've got family to think about. It's so difficult. And if you're trying to attract players as well from the continent, that's just another level of difficulty, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, I think the Philogene one's a good example. It's obviously been a saga this last few weeks. It's taken quite a while for it to come to pass. But last season, when we came out here this time last year, Philogene was on the cards. So what we're looking at, July. So obviously, we came out a bit earlier last year. I think we came out the first week of July rather than the second week. And I was told out here that this time last year that Philogene they were in talks with, and he didn't actually sign the contract until deadline day. Yeah. I mean, admittedly, much of that was down to his agent trying to flog him around to anybody, even on deadline day. Jaden wanted to come, was at the training ground. His agent was still trying to be Mr. Clever Dick. So, and I want to go on record actually on that point as well and say there's some stuff been said about Jaden, which I think is really harsh. Jaden is a good kid. Jaden's a good lad, and I think he probably needs to look at the people around him, particularly his agent who was posting pictures of his tour of Europe. I don't think that's helped him. But Jaden at core is a really nice lad, a really good player, and I wish him the very best because he was difficult to interview, but that was his style. But I always really enjoyed talking to him, and I enjoyed. I've said this before. Football ultimately at its core is about making memories, and I think all of us of a Hull City persuasion last season enjoyed watching Jaden Philogene play at times, and it was a pleasure. So I wish him well. He's a good kid, and he doesn't deserve some of the flack that he's getting.
Yeah, exactly. I think I agree with you, Baz. I think that footballers aren't paid to talk; they're paid to play. They're paid to go out on green grass and kick a ball about and try and give the people who are paying hard-earned money the opportunity to put a smile on their face on a Saturday or a Tuesday, or in the case of this season going forward, a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday and so on. He was a good player. He had bags of ability. He wasn't afraid to show it. He had that confidence to be able to think on his feet, the speed of thought to go, I'm not just going to tap this ball past this player. I'm going to do it in such an eccentric way that it's going to get the fans pairing. And he did deliver results in terms of some of the goals that he scored. And I've mentioned it time and time before, and I don't know if it's the full-back in me or the wing-back in me. I just love the fact that he tracked back and helped out his teammates as well. That shows that he's a very well-grounded, he listens, he gets it. I take your point about the agent. I think, agents will be agents, won't they? They're going to try and obviously look after their own interests as well. And
yeah, but there's a way you can do that.
Well, it happened with Keane Lewis Potter, didn't it? I mean, Ajin's gone on record quite openly, hasn't he, and said that he really dislikes Keane Lewis Potter's agent because he found him arrogant and basically tried to pull the player away, maybe pulled the wool over his eyes, unless I'm mistaken. But Jaden, as you said, he didn't really say a lot in interviews, but that's because all he cares about is playing. So if he can break into Aston Villa now and get that next level, then fair play to him. Because as I put a post out today on social media saying he's up there with JJ Okocha for me in terms of flamboyance. But as I say at the start of this little tangenting chat that I'm having, he produced results.
Yeah. And I miss him. I think I enjoyed watching him play. 12 goals and 6 assists in 35 games or something like that. And they're going to miss him. They make no bones about him.
Do you think he would have suited Tim's style?
Yeah, I actually think Tim must look at the squad. And I caveat this by saying this is meant as no disrespect to the players that are left, because they've worked so hard this week, and I've watched every single training session, and I've watched it closely. I've seen how hard they've worked in this heat as well. But he must look at that squad and then look at what Liam had last year, the likes of Zarori, obviously Delap, Carvalho, players like that. He must look at that in Jaden and Jacob. He must look at that squad and think, Jesus, if only I had those players now. If only I had Fabio Carvalho, a Liam Delap, even in Aaron Connolly when he was, Aaron Connolly, we forget really, he scored 8 goals in the first couple of months of the season, and it was only after he got poleaxed by Angus Gunn in that Norwich game just after Christmas where that ended.
I'm smiling, by the way, for those who are viewing. I'm smiling because I just love the fact that this one altercation of this collision really has etched into your mind, hasn't it?
I can't let it go. I can't let it go. I was watching before I went to Chicago a few weeks ago for work, and I was sat in the
released that review, by the way.
No, I'm told by our travel editor Nigel, Q3 this year. I was sat in the hotel the night before I flew watching the Scotland game, when they got knocked out. And sorry, Burnsy. And Angus Gunn came out, and the lad, the
Hungarian
lad,
Hungary.
yeah. And my initial thought was, oh, Angus Gunn's done him again. He's hit him again, and in fairness, he didn't touch him, but he came out flying, and I thought he's clobbered him. But yeah, look, Connolly's a good finisher, and he's obviously got there's some complexities with Aaron Connolly. But he scored goals, and he scored good goals as well. He was a very, very clever finisher. So I just think Tim looks at that squad of Rossini last year and thinks, what if? But we are where we are.
But you can tell, can't you? It was set up in a way, and I think City fans would agree with me on this, is it just came across as, right, we're going for it this year. We're going to throw everything at it that we can. And now, really, you look at this summer, they've had to obviously sell off to reload and go again. Yeah, and I'm fully confident that when they sign these 7 or 8 players with the money that's now available to them, you're going to have an 11 that is top quality, and it's going to be able. It's then a case of keeping them fit.
It is. The worry I've got, and I think they'll sign 4 or 5 really, really good players. You touched on it earlier on about the 80% of players that he's rejected. I know unfortunately, I can't say who they are right now, but I was given 2 names the other day by somebody within the club of two names that Walter turned down, and they're very, very good players. I think one in particular, I was like, what? Because I sort of meant, we were talking about players and that, and I sort of said, well, what about him? And they were like, yeah, well, that was a player that was put to Tim, and Tim said no. And I was thinking, well, if he's saying no to that caliber of player, he must have high standards. But it's not just. I think that the thing with Tim is it's not just about who the player is; it's about what they do and how they fit within his system. So look, they are going for a high caliber of player in some respect, but you just got to give it time. You've got to, and I know none of us have got time, none of us have got patience, but we can't affect it. So we just need to let it roll. But my worry. I shouldn't. I feel like there's some interference on the sound. So I apologise. My mic got damaged in the suitcase on the way here. My worry is if the team isn't ready until the 14th of September against Sheffield United after the international break, they've lost 4 games of the season, and then we'll get to so that's 4 games of the season where they've not had the first team. Then we'll be in a similar situation come January where we're trying to sign players in January, but we're not. That team isn't ready till the beginning, middle of February. We saw that they missed out last season by 3 points and 4 or 5 goals. You can't afford to just write off the first month of the season because you're playing catch up, and particularly if that first month of the season is a couple of defeats and a draw and a win, and you're down at the bottom of the table, that becomes very difficult there to get out of. So we've seen that before. So you can't just flippantly throw away the first month of the season, say, well, whatever happens in the first month doesn't really matter because we'll have our A team by Sheffield United on the 14th after the international break when the window's closed. I don't think you can say that. I think that's a huge risk. So it is, and I know there's a food chain. City are well down the food chain when it comes to getting players from Premier League clubs. So
why do you think that is, Baz?
Say again?
Why do you think that is now, given the connections from before?
I don't think it's. I'll say straight away. I don't think it's down to the manager. I think the manager is heavily involved. He's speaking to players. I just think that when it comes to the summer, obviously the Euros is delayed, has pushed everything back a little. But you've got the relegated clubs that have got parachute payments. So, your Burnleys and Sheffield Uniteds have got the financial muscle to bring players in and give perhaps Premier League clubs more money. You've seen. Obviously, Sheffield United have got the ownership issue going on, and they're lining up players like we saw with Kiefer Moore, and they've signed Callum O'Hare, which is they're 2 great signings at this level. If them 2 combine,
he's a player. He's a player, Callum O'Hare. I'm really surprised. We all have our own opinions of who we'd like to sign, and when I saw at the end of last season that Callum O'Hare was available on a free transfer. I was really shocked that they didn't put their hat in the ring and just at least pick the phone up from what we know and go, unless people think that he's completely not suited to the style. I thought he would have been a good fit.
Yeah, I think they've got Abdush, haven't they? And I think they've spent a lot of money on Abdush. And and I think that he's the player that they want in that position. So
he was mint, by the way, the other night. I thought.
Yeah,
I
but
love
again,
his energy.
I love him. I love Abdush. The one thing I would say about Abdush is his numbers. He's got for all his good play in the 16 games at the end of last season, goals and assists. So he needs, particularly given City's problems of losing all the goal scorers or the goals out of the team, there's going to be a huge emphasis on Abdush to turn around this season and get goals and assists. He's a I love him as a player. I love his work ethic. I love how he operates. He did some brilliant stuff against Fenerbahce. But we need end product. End product has got to be turned into numbers. And that, for me, if Hull City are going to be successful this season, they have to get Abdush involved and Abdush scoring and creating and getting players around him. They've got to get players up front. He would have been like Kiefer Moore would have been perfect. So, yeah. Look, I know we're pushing time. Just finally, before we go, Fletch, thoughts on the trip as a whole? Obviously, I know you're over there, but watching from over there, how would you assess? How would you assess it?
It seems like they've been worked incredibly hard. Pre-season's hard to judge, really, because I remember it's if you think about the game in general, I think Paul, Alfie Jones, Sean McLaughlin, Matty Jacob, Ryan Giles, Coyley and the rest, the amount of responsibility that they're going to have to take on both fitness-wise and just tactically, by the looks of things, is enormous. It's a step up from Liam Rossini's style of play for me. Just these positions that they're being told to go into. And I think you could see that even though it's been 10-day trip, you can see how quickly they're starting to adapt.
Absolutely.
There's a clear distinction over the fact that Tim has put his blueprint down, and there seems to be already clear sign that things are being taken on board and things are being put into practice. You've referenced it before, the amount of crosses that are coming in. It could have been a whole different story last night in terms of the scoreline, because if you had an old school number 9 on the end of some of the stuff that was being, fizzed into the penalty area, then they would have maybe got 1 or 2 more goals in comparison to the one that they had. And so at the minute, I have the feeling of that fans are definitely going to get their money's worth in terms of goal mouth action and goals itself. It's a bit of a lottery spin for me as what the numbers are going to be. It's almost like dipping your hands in and going, Hull City this week will get 3 and Bristol City will get 2. And then next week it could be Hull City will get 2, but their opposition will get 4. It does feel like it's going to be really sort of up and down and side to side in terms of how many goals go in the back of the net. Feels very much like the Leonid Slutsky era, if you ask me.
Yes, that's a very good comparison. I think on the whole, it's been a good trip. I know that I've had comments, Hull City fans have come to me and asking questions about the veracity of the trip. Why are Hull City out here when they've only got half a squad, etc., etc. First and foremost, the trip was planned a long time ago. It wasn't just concocted, a couple of days before we travelled. I think that it was important. It was important for them to come. Tim's got an awful lot of good work into the players. Irrespective of how many stay, how many go, a lot of those players will stick around. Whether it be Louis Coyle, whether it be Matty Jacob, Abdush, Xavi Simons. There's still a core group there that will be together for the duration of the season, and you can see the impact already that we've been here for 10 days. They've had 3 weeks of training, and you can already see the impact on the way they play. So I think it's been a really good trip. Obviously back home, and then to prepare for Doncaster on Tuesday night. I think that'll be a young team because the players have been flogged so much. Yeah. That's a small group of players have been flogged so much while they've been out here.
How does it compare to last year, Baz, given that you're over there?
Totally different. Last year was much more relaxed. It was intense. The sessions, like 2 hours, were really intense. But the players had an awful lot of downtime around the complex, which I think they found quite boring because there's, it's a great complex is Riva, but there's nothing there. You compare that to Regnum where we went to Regnum in March, where there's golf courses, there's copious amounts of pools. It's a complete complex at Regnum in Antalya. This is purely a football hotel. It's a football training. It's basically a big training ground with a hotel.
Right.
But they've been doing double sessions, whereas last year it was one session, and all the gym work and stuff like that. But so I think they've really found it difficult. They've really had to. They've really worked hard. You know, they, as I say, 2-hour session in the morning, and then another session in the early evening. So it's been hard for them, and I think it showed. I think it showed in the second half at Saracholu last night that they just got what they were worn out.
Are you picking up anything unique from Tim, by the way? Because I remember when Marco Silva came and he banned ketchup. No, I know you like your food, Baz. Has he or the coaches done anything a little bit unique?
Not that I'm aware of. He is a stickler for time. He had a go at the stadium last night. We were about 2 minutes into our interview, and he had a pop at the security guard because the security guard came into the room, opened the door, walked out, but left the door open. So you're like, "Hey, up, come on, shut that door." Though he's a stickler for time. They have to be meal times, bang on time. So if he says 6 o'clock, he means 6 o'clock. Be late or be square. You know, if training starts at 11, he expects you there. He doesn't expect you to turn up at 11. He expects you on the line with your boots on, ready to go at 11. And so he is very, very punctual, and that goes for the staff as well. That's not just the players. You know, that he expects that of his staff. So in terms of like banning ketchup, or I don't think he's done that, because I saw one of the players having some barbecue sauce that was on the table at dinner the other night. So it was HP, which is you know, as barbecue sauce goes, there's some really bad barbecue sauce, but that one's all right. So I've not noticed anything, but I'm sure as we get to know him a bit more and we get to hear more from the players, I'm sure these little quirks will start to come out. But they do speak highly of him. They really do. I must say that. He's intense on the training ground. He's not afraid to say what he thinks. You know, he's very, very to the point. If he thinks that's, you know what, he'll tell you. But he'll also tell you if he thinks if it's good as well. So I think he certainly made an impression, and I think I was pleased that they streamed the game last night, because I thought it gave the fans an opportunity to see, you know, what we can expect from his team. And as you said just now, Fletch, it isn't going to be dull. You know, they might lose. They're going to win games 3-2, and they're going to lose a couple of games 3-2, 4-2, 3-3. As long as they can providing they can get somebody in the team that can score some goals, because at the minute they haven't got anybody. So right.
So if you are a number 9 out there, and you just happen to watch the 1904 club, there might be 30 goals in it for you this season. So come on, sign up.
So can I just, before we close as well, I just want to say it was really nice to see the fans that have arrived, the fans that have come out on the club's holiday. They were there in the ground last night. We could see them decked out in amber and black and the red Hull City shirts they were given when they came on the far side of the stadium. And they got to visit the training ground this morning to have a bit of a meet and greet, because the players originally it was supposed to be an open training session, but given I don't think none of us got back to our hotel until 2 o'clock this morning. So, and given the game yesterday, the players that played just had a gym session. The players that didn't play, I mean, there weren't many of them, did a bit of training, but it was nice to see the fans come to the training ground and, you know, mingle with the players, get some pictures, have a bit of a chin wag. So that was nice. So, you know, that well done to the staff behind the scenes at the MKM Stadium, because I know it's not easy. It's not an easy task putting on something like that. So credit to the staff, you know, Tash, Brendan, Joe, all the guys back at base who have worked tirelessly to turn that thing around and get it done. So that's it from Istanbul. I think that's all we've got time for today. We'll be back in England tomorrow, and then back at Slubrious Doncaster on Tuesday, from Sarachota in Istanbul to Doncaster.
The Grant McCann derby.
Yeah,
to give it some glitter.
The Grant McCann, Billy Sharp, and Tom Nixon derby now.
Absolutely. So Tatala might play 45 minutes each.
Well, he's injured at the minute, and they've got,
that's
so we'll have to wait and see. Right, Fletch, thank you so much for popping in. Hopefully, I've got a bit of time off next week to spend with the family. It's school holidays, and I've been away for a best part of 2 weeks over the last 3 weeks. So I better go and see them, spend a bit of time with them, see how they're doing. But we will be at Doncaster and then Newcastle, and we'll try our best to get the band back together at some point. Me, you, Fletch, or your Fletch, me, you, Burnsy, and Captain Prutton. Oh, Fletch is gone. Fletch is frozen in time. Yeah, keep getting in touch, people. 1904 Club on Twitter. Thank you so much, and we'll be back in touch with you again soon.